Hi guys! The last couple of days have been absolutely crazy here aboard my DIY project sailboat, Athena. I'm coming to the end of a very long and very time-consuming deck replacement. When I first purchased Athena, I optimistically assumed that I could simply just remove the old teak deck, do a bit of fairing, and then slap on some paint. But as most of you guys know, it turned out to be a little bit more involved than that. Over the course of the summer, I've ripped off the old teak deck, replaced the old core with a brand new core, and put on a brand new top skin. The last couple of weeks have been all about fairing the deck, but then finally a few days ago I was ready to put down the first coat of primer on the entire foredeck. And this is basically where I'm at now. I'm done fairing the deck and I've got a single coat of primer on there. And that's very fortunate because I need to have Athena ready to move out of the shed on Saturday. And to save myself a lot of work in the spring, I desperately need to get at least a single layer of top coat on top of this primer. The deck is not really perfect. There is a bit of unevenness or waviness to this area here. But I think once I've got kiwi grip on there and some deck hardware and the deck is all cluttered up, you're not really gonna notice that. On a positive note, this edge here of the core turned out a lot better than the old edge from the old core. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that this is pretty dang spiffy. That point of view you just saw has to be the most revealing angle on that edge. But looking from up here, it looks pretty dang close to perfect. The astute might have noted that the cabin top looks a little bit rough around the edges, literally. If I had another week or maybe 2 weeks, I think I could finish the cabin top too, but I don't, so in all likelihood I'll just end up slapping a couple of coats of primer on here to protect the new laminate from the sun's harmful UV rays. I will have to sand off all of that primer in the spring to be able to fair the cabin top, but that's okay with me, and that's a great opportunity to paint the entire cabin top and the cockpit. And who knows, I might go ahead and paint the top sides while I'm at it. The first item on my to-do list for tonight is to get the area here aft of the cockpit coaming sanded. Yesterday I applied a bit of fairing compound to this using a piece of plastic that I cut into the right profile. I've already taken care of the section over here on the starboard side, but I still need to deal with the port side. The starboard side, however, I think looks pretty good. It is amazing what a tiny bit of sanding can do. This is, at the very least, spiffy adjacent. I absolutely love the look of all these soft curves, but before this is done, it is gonna need just a little bit more fairing compound, and I'll do that later tonight. Before I start working on the transom, there is another matter to deal with, and as you can see, Camilla has gotten a little bit of a head start. Very, very early this morning, I swung by and took care of a few pinholes. I doubt this is the best way to deal with them, but it's the only way I had time to. Ta-da! Pinhole, be gone. The reason I say this might not be the best way to deal with the pinholes is because I'll end up with fairing compound in between layers of primer. I have a feeling that this is gonna be fine, but I guess I'll just have to wait and see if it'll stand the test of time. We're done with all the sanding. That was relatively easy. Camilla's mixing up some 407 so that we can fair the aft end of the cockpit coaming. That looks a little light. That, on the other hand, looks perfect. Fingers crossed for a nice, smooth, even layer so I don't have to do a lot of sanding tomorrow. Yep, I think that's perfect. Now there's just the small matter of the last tiny bit of fairing compound on the edge out here. With the aft end of the cockpit coaming taken care of, the last thing on the to-do list for tonight is to get another layer of primer on the foredeck. But that's just going to be painting green on green, so that's not going to be that exciting to look at. So we'll jump ahead till tomorrow. Hi guys, it's Friday afternoon. Over the last couple of days, I have done an obscene amount of glorious sanding and tedious painting, especially to the area you see right here above me. Before heading to work earlier today, I was able to take care of the last bit of sanding on the tiny area aft of the cockpit and also to apply the first coat of primer. This is what that area looks like now with that first coat of primer on there, and yeah, I still love all of the soft curves here. I think this turned out really well. The very first thing I want to do today is to get the last coat of primer on this surface so that I'm ready to start applying Sigma Dur 550 tomorrow morning. And done! That was the second and final coat of primer. You might be wondering why I'm only applying 2 layers of primer. The same primer, if used underneath the waterline as a barrier coat, would require substantially more layers. Well, the friendly PPG paint inspector Kenneth from my last video told me that as long as it's not an area that has standing water on it, 2 coats is perfectly fine. I did something yesterday that I've been looking forward to for a really long time. I got the first coat of Sigma Dur 550 on the foredeck. And this is what the foredeck looks like now. As you can see, it still needs another coat or 2 before it's completely covering up the delightful green color of the primer, but overall, it's starting to look pretty good. As you might be able to see, the hatch openings here are pretty smooth. This will need a tiny bit of sanding before applying a final coat of Sigma Dur 550, but the surface out here, on the other hand, is a little bit textured. That's because I didn't roll and tip the surface out here. I only did that to the hatch openings, and that's because the vast majority of the deck is going to get covered by kiwi grip, so I don't care if there's a bit of texture out here. Later this winter, when I go to put on the new hatches, I am gonna have to do that on a dry day, because if this surface gets wet, there's no way I'm gonna be able to stay up on the deck. It is incredibly slippery. Anywho, I still have quite a bit of painting to do, and I want to get the first coat of Sigma Dur on the entire deck tonight. So let's get some paint mixed up. My little epoxy heating box here is turning out to be one of the most useful things I have built in years. Anywho, this is the hardener and this is the base. One funny thing I noticed while reading the data sheet for this paint is the fact that the mix ratio between hardener and base is listed as 88:12, which just seems kind of weird because that's the same as 44:6 or 22:3 or 7.33333:1. So why listed as 88:12? If you know the reason for that somewhat weird way of describing the mix ratio, please go ahead and leave a comment down below. Okay, and now I will do my very best to hit 7.3333. Yep, that looks about right. A couple of you guys, as well as my friendly neighborhood PPG paint inspector, have suggested that I should add just a tiny bit of thinner to the paint before rolling and tipping it onto the deck. Last night when applying that first coat to the foredeck, I forgot. It was late in the day and I was tired and I just didn't use my brain. And that is the main reason why I'll have to go over the hatch openings and just give them a light sanding. There is a slight texture to that surface now. That's not a big deal, however. It's a tiny area, and for the vast majority of the deck, like I said, it's going to have kiwi grip all over it. I do want to have a pattern to the kiwi grip up on deck, like smaller areas interrupted by some of the white paint on deck, but those areas where there aren't going to be kiwi grip, that will be easy to sand that in the spring before I apply one last coat of Sigmadur 550. Enough yammering on. I've got some other stuff I want to tell you about Sigmadur 550, but that can wait until tomorrow. I might as well get another coat of paint on the hatch openings as well as the rest of the deck. Good morning, guys. It is Saturday morning, and by the end of today, Athena needs to be ready to move out of this shed. This is my first time ever working with Sigmadur 550, and I gotta say, I am very impressed, and I'm also a little bit surprised. Yesterday, I applied a very thick coat to the hatch openings. I did that because I figured I was going to be sanding them anyways, and I just wanted some more material to work with. But this is what came out of that. And to me, this is perfectly acceptable. I was convinced I would have to sand the hatch openings to get rid of the textured surface from that first coat where I didn't add any thinner. But yeah, looking at this, I think this is ready for just a quick round of polishing, and then this is going to be a mirror finish. It turns out the yard won't actually be ready to move Athena until Monday, but I've got some other stuff planned for tomorrow, so I still want to have her ready to move by the end of today. It's been a little over 12 hours since I applied the last coat of paint yesterday. Let's just check what the temperature has been like during the night using my little trusty temperature logging doohickey. So looking at this, it looks like we had a low of just about 12 degrees Celsius. Now let's check the data sheet to see what the minimal overcoating interval is like at roughly that temperature. So it looks like we have a minimum of 8 hours at 10 degrees Celsius. So we're well over that, meaning I'm ready to apply another coat. Add to that the fact that this thing measures ambient temperature, and I'm heating the boat from the inside, so the deck, or the surface that the paint is sitting on, is probably a little bit warmer than the ambient temperature. So I think it's safe to say that I can go ahead and apply another coat of paint. Now that I've got the data sheet out, there is something else I want to show you, and it is right here. Curious at temperatures down to -5 degrees Celsius or 23 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sure that's not that uncommon, but it is sure as heck gonna make my life a lot easier this coming winter when I go to put in the hatches up on deck, just in case I find out that I want to add just one more coat of Sigmadur 550. My plan is to put in the 3 new hatches up on deck sometime in December, but more about that in next weekend's video. And also in next weekend's video, I'll talk a little bit about the cost of this deck replacement. Before putting away my phone, there is one more thing I want to show you, and that is right here underneath the overcoating intervals. And you see how there's a minimum and a maximum? If we look under the maximum overcoating interval, it is unlimited. I'm excited about that unlimited maximum overcoating interval mainly for one reason. Now that I've been able to get Sigmadur 550 on the deck, I'll only have to do a bare minimum of sanding in the spring before I can apply another coat of Sigmadur 550 on the deck. If I was only able to get primer on the deck, that would be another story, but let me show you. Here's the data sheet for Sigma Cover 280, and I promise this is the last data sheet we'll look at today. Looking at the overcoat interval here, there is a minimum, a maximum, and then another maximum. The first maximum is if the primer is exposed to direct sunlight, and the second one is if it's not exposed to direct sunlight. And that's because the primer, just like the laminate on my deck, because it's made with epoxy, gets damaged by UV light. It'll turn chalky, white, brittle, and then it'll just crumble away. Sure, I've only got epoxy primer on the sides of the cabin top, but that's because I plan on sanding those in the spring before fairing them. Because I didn't have time to fair the surface of the cabin top, I'm not going to be able to put in the port lights. But I don't want to have great big open holes here once Athena moves outside. Fortunately, there is an easy fix. A bit of transparent tarp and some outdoor tape should seal up those openings nicely. Would I have preferred to put in the real port lights and have the cabin top be all fair, nice and finished? Yes, of course I would. But yeah, this only 24 hours in a day. I am really hoping this stuff will stay put throughout the winter, but I guess we'll find out. All of the openings for the port lights are now covered by tarp, and that means I get to have a bit of natural light here inside the boat. Well, once I move the boat outside, of course, that is. I've pulled the tarps as taut as I possibly could in the hopes that they won't be flapping around and tearing themselves to pieces. When it comes to the openings for the hatches in the deck, I can't simply just cover those over with tape and tarp because I want to continue working on these in December. If you're wondering why I didn't paint them already, it's because they're not done yet, and that's also the reason I want to continue working on them in December. But all of this needs to be cleaned up and faired before I can paint them. As some of you might have guessed, I'm going to build 3 little boxes that are going to sit on top of the openings for the hatches. I am not going for pretty here, I'm just going for watertight. They aren't pretty, but they should at least keep the boat nice and dry inside. As you can see, the boxes are a lot bigger than the hatch openings, and that is what's going to allow me to continue working on the hatch openings after Athena's moved out of the shed. I've gone ahead and trimmed the biggest of the boxes because it covers quite a large area of the deck. I've just trimmed it so that it sits flush on the deck. Ta-da! I have trimmed the 2 smaller boxes too so that they sit nice and flush with the deck. All that's left to do now in regards to the boxes is to put a small fillet along the edge to seal them up. And there we go, a somewhat sloppy fillet all along the joints inside of each of the 3 boxes. I'm gonna put this down below to cure, and then we can get on to some sanding. In all honesty, that fillet is probably way overkill. Those boxes only really need to last a month. I could just have duct taped the seams, but I'm out of duct tape and I have a ton of 406. When I went home last night, I was absolutely convinced I wouldn't have to do any more sanding. But alas, there is always more sanding. Although to be fair, this time around, it's just some tiny grains of dust that have gotten stuck in the primer. Now that this has been sanded, vacuumed and wiped down, I don't have any more excuses, so I better go mix up some paint. Seeing as this stuff has a pot life of 5 hours at 20 degrees Celsius, I might as well go ahead and mix up enough to give the entire deck another coat. I'm going to start with the most terrifying part, which is this area back here, because this is basically done. So if I make any mistakes here, that would be kind of annoying. Just in case it isn't completely obvious, I am no expert when it comes to painting. With that quick disclaimer out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Huh, that looks pretty decent for a first coat if you ask me. I've cheated a little bit and taken care of the rest of the deck off camera. You might be able to see the slight unevenness there is to the deck out near the forward hatch, right about there. But other than that, I think the deck looks pretty dang spiffy. I can't really show you because the deck is wet, but the edge of the core looks like something that came out of a factory. I am so excited for the spring when I get to fair the sides of the cabin top and apply kiwi grip to the deck. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of work, but I also think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna end this video here, even though today is only Saturday, because tomorrow, that's Sunday, I'm gonna be shooting next weekend's video. Because next weekend, I'm not gonna be here aboard Athena or even in Denmark. I'm gonna be visiting my awesome girlfriend in Los Angeles. Our schedule this time around is cram full, so I won't have time to arrange any kind of meetup. But the next time I'm in LA, I promise to carve out an afternoon for you guys. That would be a lot of fun. Like I mentioned, tomorrow I'm gonna shoot next weekend's video. So that video is gonna be a regular type video here aboard Athena. But I'm gonna be in LA for 2 weeks and I only have time to shoot one extra video tomorrow. I might, while I'm in LA, have time to shoot a very quick off-the-cuff Q&A type video, but those don't seem to be all that popular. I'm gonna pop out one of those YouTube voting cards. Please go ahead and tell me if that's a video you would be interested in seeing or if I should simply just not bother. Okay guys, that is gonna be it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!